Hello, my name's Diana Nieto. For my cross-gender project, I chose target shooting. My fiance is a former United States Marine and an avid gun enthusiast. I asked him to take me to the range and teach me how to shoot. One evening, he took me to the shooting range and taught me the skill of marksmanship. But before I get into the experience, I will discuss the history of firearms in the United States. Firearms were both an essential and crucial tool used by the early settlers of the original 13 colonies. They were used by the early frontiersmen to help them tame the wild and undiscovered land of the early America. Once the original settlers had claimed the eastern side of North America and were able to establish agriculture, the firearm took a backseat to everyday life. From then on, firearms were primarily used by men to hunt wild game for food and for fur trade. It was very uncommon for women to handle or use firearms, unless it was a necessity, such as defending the home while the men were gone. Their role in early America was primarily housework and homesteading chores. Although women were not part of the actual physical conflict, they still played an important part by supporting their husbands and their sons to continue doing their best in the war. On April 19, 1775, an exchange of gunfire between colonial men and British soldiers at Village Green in Lexington sparked the American Revolution. Because many of the colonists in America owned their own firearms, the colonists had the tools necessary to beat back the British and gain independence from the tyranny of Great Britain. Since then, the firearm has become a symbol of freedom and liberty in the United States. After the United States had won its independence from Great Britain, the firearm was put back to use to aid the western expansion of the U.S. Current issues. Today, firearms are still a prominent part of American culture. The U.S. is one of the few countries in the world that allows its citizens to own and carry firearms. However, until recently, with the horrific event that took place at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newton, Connecticut, firearms have become widely scrutinized as to their necessity to the general public by politicians across the country. There are two sides of this coin concerning gun control in the U.S. One side believes that there is no reason an average citizen should own certain firearms, such as the ones used by the military. The other side argues that the Constitution of the United States guarantees our right to own firearms, regardless of their model, to prevent a tyranny government much like we experienced in 1775 with Great Britain. Target shooting today. Although it's still a male-dominated activity, through the introduction into this hobby, I found that more and more women have become avid shooters who shoot the same because they have the same interest in the sport as men do. We are also starting to see more women join big teams such as the U.S. Olympic shooting team. The involvement of women in the sport has encouraged women to get involved with any activity that they want, especially activities that go against their gender norms. Traditional ideals. The activity I chose to do fits into traditional ideals of leisure for the opposite gender. Men have always been known to provide and protect. I find that shooting appeals to men because throughout history it has given them a chance to demonstrate their mental and physical strength. Men have always been the ones to put food on the table, and they have been capable of doing that by simply hunting. Men are also the ones responsible for keeping the peace and protecting their homes. Most of their protection services have utilized the use of firearms. Overall, the use of guns has symbolized what it is to be a male American. How does it relate? Well, my experience with target shooting has definitely paralleled with everything I've learned in class this quarter. I have found that gender norms are not so much of a thing of the past, but a thing of the present that we're still working on. It's still difficult for women to engage in certain activities, such as shooting. Most women that are involved in marksmanship are often thought as radical feminists or lesbians. The media has also played an important role generalizing genders. Female athletes, for example, are portrayed as sex symbols regardless of what sport they play, and not as talented athletes that they are. This kind of portrait has negatively generalized women norms in leisure activities. Why I did not participate in this activity before? Well, before this project, I had never fired a firearm. For many reasons, one of them being I was a girl, so I grew up knowing that girls played with dolls and boys with guns. My mother would always give more importance on how I looked or how my appearance looked. So such expectation really limited my activities. The idea of shooting a gun was unacceptable in my household. So I grew up believing that guns were only for boys. And, that also meant that I didn't have one around the house. My dad didn't have one either. So without a firearm or someone that knew how to properly shoot one, I didn't have someone to go out and teach me how to use one. So that was really a big limitation in something I probably would have liked to participated in. I also found that the idea of going out shooting, you know, where the opposite sex obviously dominated, it was really intimidating. And I guess overall I was afraid of not being taken seriously simply because I was a woman. Constraints. From the very beginning, I found my choice of activity to be mentally and physically challenging. Before anything, I prepared by researching gun instruction and safety. And according to the National Rifle Association, safety should be the first thing you should learn. Which meant I really had to think about every step and movement I took before deciding to press the trigger. I quickly learned that shooting was nothing like what I'd seen on TV, so I made sure to carefully follow directions. A gun is an object that should never be taken lightly, for it has the capacity of destroying whatever is pointed at. Besides learning proper safety, I was taught how to properly stand, aim, breathe, and squeeze the trigger. With so many things to think about, I surely found myself scared and unsure of what I was doing. Reflection. Like I said, a lot of emphasis was put on gun safety. You truly needed to always pay attention in everything, what was going on around you, to where your body was, your breathing, what your goal was, everything in general. Um, and like I said, it was nothing like in the movies. So I had to mentally take away what I thought shooting was and really focus and narrow it down to what I was being told. Of course, here's me shooting. As you can tell, I'm trying to follow directions as much as I could without being a little bit nervous and overwhelmed by the noise and movement of everyone else around me.
There you go. Remember your hand positioning?
Hand positioning was something hard for me, not because it was difficult, but because I felt comfortable holding the weapon in a certain way, which was the incorrect way. And the proper way was a little bit difficult for me to hold because my hands weren't, or at least my fingers were not long enough. But although it felt uncomfortable, it was the most proper and precise way of shooting my gun.
Perfect. There you go. Look at that. You nailed it. Told you. Now,
So
the trigger's lighter now.
I felt
Okay?
more excited after I
So
finally
just
started doing
let
something
the trigger all
right,
the way out.
simply because I started seeing everything that I was being told to do pay off.
Take your time. Make the
So you
shot.
can tell I'm
There you go.
squared, my arms are
You're okay.
straight out,
One more.
I'm
Take your
holding
time.
tight,
Shot count.
I'm breathing, and I'm slowly pulling on the
There you
trigger,
go.
not
That.
jerking it like I was earlier.
Push
And
that
then
number.
after I was done, he was just reminding me to always put my gun on safe, unload the magazine, and set it down for the next person to put the rounds back in, or for the next person to, come in and shoot. And then on this slide, you can just see where my bullets hit the target. You can tell on my first shot was this one over here, which wasn't the best one. But after he told me to breathe and slowly pull and not, jerk the trigger, my bullets were more centered to where I was aiming. So I definitely saw improvement. Here's another short video.
I'm first going to.
Now in this one I have a different gun, so for every gun it's the same concept, but a little bit different because some guns you have to do certain things and others you don't. This one was a bigger one, so the grip around it was harder for me, but I managed to remember how to properly put my fingers around it. Now ideally when I shoot, I really don't want the gun to come back like I did in the first one. I want it to still stay firm and straight.
Hold it nice and tight.
So I'm trying to hold it tight as much as I can and not letting it control me.
Perfect.
So that one was more perfect because the gun didn't move back.
Perfect.
I'm also starting to feel a little bit more comfortable using it. And then here's another short one as well. And this one I really do start feeling more comfortable because I'm doing everything on my own. I'm loading it, shooting it, and unloading.
Record. There you go. Slingshot.
Oh my god.
And this one's harder.
I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, I had a bigger bullet inside, so I was a bit nervous about how much it was going to recoil.
Just hold it nice and tight.
But it helped that I had been shooting my way up with different bullets with bigger sizes. So by the time I shot this one, I was nervous the first one, but as you can tell, I started really getting the hang of it.
You see how that one hit me in the head?
Yep. I got it on film for you.
Oh, great.
Participating. The experience really gave me an insight into both women and men leisure activities. For one, I found that after overcoming my nerves, I was able to properly follow directions and focus on my target. Once I started to do well, I realized that shooting was not only a men's leisure activity, but a woman's one as well. I also found that the opposite sex enjoys shooting because it provides them an activity that's fun and practical to know. Insight. I found shooting to be fun, extremely fun and enjoyable. I know that I will continue to go shooting as often as I can, seeing how everything is very expensive. But overall, my experience taught me to go out of my comfort zone and definitely try new things. And, whether these things be new because I've never seen them or just new because they're not normally something I do, it is important to try because you never know if you really do enjoy it. Thank you.